Hello lovelies, how are you all doing today? I hope you are well. I'm just making the most of a break in the rain. The sun's actually trying to come out, it's up there. Yes, to get on with gathering some bits and bobs for seed saving. So I'm going to do that. We're going to go back in the kitchen shortly and I'm going to sort of just demonstrate a couple of practical things with seed saving. But then I thought also whilst I'm out here, right, let's get picking our bits. Yeah, while I'm out here, oopla, I thought I'd also talk about the lessons I've learned from this garden this year. Obviously it's a new to me garden. So starting with a cucumber, I've got another one. One could wait till it's even more yellow and soft and mushy than this. I'm not waiting though because frankly, just so you can see, honestly, because the weather has been so grotty, it could be 2 weeks where I'm out here again. The Gigantes beans that I'm leaving for seed saving, they're starting to go over, they're just starting to dry out a little bit. Not huge. Oh, one of them is there. They're going to just stay on the plant and they'll stay and they'll... Ooh, that's my boiler kicking off, I don't know why. They'll stay on the plant, stay until they're dry and rattling. The only time I would intervene and take them off earlier is if we don't get any dry days at all, or the forecast is for no dry days, but we do have a few dry days forecast, so they can stay out here and dry on the plant. Oh, and there's one down there. Good. Right, and then the other thing is some tomatoes. So I'll just go and grab the super duper ripe tomatoes. We'll go in a second, but first, just a little chat about what I've learned in this garden this year. One of the big things that's sort of been apparent, obvious, etc. to me from this year is where I've got these little sort of stones edging, but then the sort of gaps. It doesn't really work very well because the soil is sort of almost right to the top of them. Folk have been asking me what this mesh was, this chicken wire. It was to stop the sparrows from having their dust baths right at the front, because every time I had a dust bath, the soil was ending up on the patio. So I put this down, and they still had room, plenty of room within the bed to have their dust bath, but it just helped to keep the soil back there. You can see now I've had the cocoa de pampole beans are finished. You can see all the little annual weed seeds coming back now. They're getting light, so I'll just need to hoe them off. But yes, this has been quite a thing this year of the soil just coming out of the bed, because the soil height is basically higher than this edging, and also the edging isn't even, it doesn't always meet. You can see there's gaps, and you can see how the soil just, every time I watered, it would just run out. So that's not very practical. So when I get the patio sorted, and I really hope I can do that next year, but as part of that is to make this edging a bit taller, and without the gaps, get it taller, because also I want to be able to keep adding compost. So for example, when the grow bags are finished, both the black growing bags and the plastic grow bags, all of that compost will come onto the bed. So yeah, it's all going to be tumbling down if I don't fix this edging. So that's the first sort of big thing this year. I need to get a better edge. Oh, look how the foxgloves are coming on just while we're here. Yay! I'm chuffed. And also while we're here, just to make note, I mean, I don't know if you can, I don't know how well this will pick up on camera, but can you see between this, so we've got a slight gap here where the rain has been able to get through, and it's moistened the ground, but you can see under there it's really, really dry. This is from a shower an hour ago, maybe. The soil is so loose I know I've mentioned this before, but as we're here, this is all part of the lessons of this year. This soil is so loose and it gets dry really quickly, so that's all the more reason to add as much organic matter as I can from the compost bin, the sort of rubbish compost from here. So with the growing bags, there won't be a lot of nutrient left in them, probably none at all by this stage of the year. However, that bulky organic matter added to this soil should help in terms of moisture retention. So it's not about adding nutrients, because I think the soil there's enough nutrients in the soil. Well, judging by how these guys have grown. I mean, look, I've cut 2 foot off the top. So yes, get my edge sorted and get my soil improved in terms of adding organic matter. Good stuff. I thought I'd sit down and be a bit lazy for these next couple of points. Also, over my shoulder you can see the Japanese anemone. It's so pretty, and with it being white you can see how it really pops in that sort of shady, darker area. So I had intended to have it out. Sorry, Richard. I sort of had asked Richard if he wanted it. You ain't getting it, babe. Because it is that lovely little pop of brightness. I am going to keep a close eye on it though, because I know they can be thuggish. I've looked in my neighbours' gardens where they've got it and it's gone rampant. So I will keep a close eye on it, but it can stay. That wasn't what I was going to talk about though. Although, hang on, where's my little list? In a way, it is part of what I want to talk about, because I'm having that dilemma because it's not a big garden and I love growing veggies. I absolutely love it. It's incredibly satisfying to start with a seed, put a seed into the ground, nurture that plant, it comes to fruition, and then I get to eat from it. I get to eat for free. I mean, it's crazy. So I'm always going to be a vegetable grower, but I'd really love to have more flowers. I would love to have more flowers. I'm just not sure how I can fit them in. I'm not asking for advice, by the way, because I know people are going to say, oh, you can have pots everywhere and do this, do that. I know I'm going to be making extra beds when the patio gets changed, but even so, it's never going to be a garden that's big enough for a lot of flowers as well as all my veg. So this is probably going to be where I do flowers, because it's not great for veggies. And of course out front. So I've got plans for out the front of how I want to develop that. But there are so many, all the lovely cottage garden flowers we think of. The foxgloves, mine are looking really happy now, but things like the hollyhocks, the cosmos, cornflowers, coneflowers. I love them all. I just don't have space for them. So that's been a bit of a tug of war this year, and I'll keep thinking on it, but I think realistically that's going to be the front garden, not so much the back garden. The thing with the pots, yes, I could have loads of pots on the patio, not too many, because I'm dyspraxic. They'll just become a trip hazard for me. But the big thing with the pots this summer undoubtedly is the watering. Yes, I've got the hose pipe now, which makes things much easier than going up and down all these stairs with a can, one can at a time. The hose makes things easier, but I don't necessarily want to be watering, using all that water. So I think pots for the flowers, still undecided. Oh, and the thing about for the front, I am going to look specifically at sort of drought tolerant plants, because I would like, for those of you who remember my London allotment, you'll remember my herb bed with the beautiful lavender. That bed never got watered. I didn't ever water it, apart from there were a couple of, every now and again I might put a spare vegetable in there. I might put a spare tomato plant in. I'd water the tomato plant, but otherwise that entire bed, so rosemary, sage, the lavenders, the chives, all of that, didn't ever water it. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking for the front, to replicate that. So the Verbena bonariensis, the lavenders, the chives, all those lovely purples. brilliant. Yes, so I'd like more flowers, but they're probably not going to be out here. Those the grow bags, the plastic ones, I won't use those again ever, because it's very obvious the tomatoes in those compared to the tomatoes in the black bags. Even the black bags, I feel a little bit, I'm so glad I had them this year. I'm so glad, because it gave me instant garden space. But I would like in time to reduce the number I use, just because they dry out so quickly. Also the cucumber frame that I did it as a teepee. Again, this is sort of harking back to London. I always used to grow them up more of a ladder. So imagine bar of bamboo lashed, so that it was, and looking at it sideways, it leaned at that angle. So there'd be a bamboo pole here, another bamboo pole here, that again, and then strap bamboo across the front. So it's like they climbed up the ladder. Much easier for harvesting, much easier for pruning to see what I've got. With the teepee, it got really crowded, and I missed two really gorgeous cukes right at the top, just because they were so mushed into each other. So no teepees in the future. Another thing from this year, the amount of beans I grew, well, it was one gigantes plant in the end, because I had 4 seeds left and only one came good. And then I had, with Coco de Pampol, I think I had about 14 plants. I mean, it's a huge, so that was about 15 plants in total. In London, I used to have 300 plus bean plants. So obviously I have to get used to the idea that I'm still getting used to that. I am not growing on that scale. I'm no longer growing for self-sufficiency. I'm growing for supplementary and for the enjoyment. But I'd like to squeeze a few more beans in next year somewhere. And of course, the great thing about beans is, apart from the cocoa, which are bush, there's a variety of Coco de Pampol. It's not quite Coco de Pampol, it's called Coco Sophie, and it's a climbing version. So maybe I could try them against the wall behind my table. You know, the slightly shady wall where I've got my bunting and stuff. Yeah, I'd love to get a few more beans in next year. But again, with the extra beds that I'm hoping to create when the patio comes up, I am kind of envisaging some bean towers on the back wall of the garden, either side of my bench. So we'll see. Yeah, it's been a really interesting, it's been a great year, frankly, because I honestly didn't expect to get growing this year. I thought I'd just be sorting and digging out and, you know, really occupied with the flat and bits and bobs, but I couldn't resist. Can't resist, the urge to grow is so strong. So it's great that I got some stuff in this year. A, because I'm feeding myself from it, but B, it's really given me a chance to see, you know, where is the light in this garden? Where have things been happy? Where have things been less happy? What's my soil like in a drought year? Because frankly, you know, we hardly had a drop of rain from mid-May to mid-June, mid-July, to June, July, 3 months. 3 months with barely a drop of rain. So yeah, it's all good. It's all really good learning. Glad I got that done this year, because it helps me to plan next year better. And I don't know, I know someone was saying that in comments, you've done really well this year, next year is going to be even better. I don't know that it will be, particularly. You know, I might be busy with other things, and it might be that this garden, what I've done this year, is the capacity of this garden. This might be it. Anyway, it's great that I had a go this year. I'm really pleased, and I'm really looking forward to next year already. Now, instead of thinking about next year too much, or should I say thinking about next year, we won't have next year in the garden unless I get myself some seeds saved. So let's pop back in the kitchen and I'll show you how I save my cuke and tomato seeds. Oh, and a brief thing on bean seeds too. I'm going to use the same technique for both my cuke and my toms. So yeah, let's crack on. Equipment. I've got a couple of old Kilner jars. You could use jam jars, it doesn't matter. Just a clear jar is useful because you want to be able to see what's going on. I've also got the lids, so I have the lids on. If you don't have lids, you could use something like, where have I got them? You could use something like a beeswax wrap. One I made myself, one I made earlier. A beeswax wrap, a saucer. The reason I'm mentioning that is because one, they can get a little bit smelly, and two, you don't want to attract the fruit flies. So a clear jar and some kind of cover. What have I got, a bowl? Oh yeah, I've got my bowl out just to put my scraps in, take it out to the compost bin. And you might want to use your jam funnel. If your cucumber is really, really, really ripe, a jam funnel is useful. I'm going to use mine. So, essentially what I'm doing with my seed saving of these two is I'm trying to replicate nature. So, in nature, these plants, we can see we're into September, the plants are still hanging on, the fruits are still hanging on the plants. And they'll hang, and they'll hang, and they'll hang. And they'll get riper and riper and mushier and mushier, and at some point in the autumn they'll drop off and they'll sit on the soil. And they have a gelatinous coating, so each of the seeds, both in the cuc and the tomatoes, they have a gelatinous coating. It helps, I can't remember, I did look up the science of all this, I'm not sure if it keeps it viable for longer. And that gelatinous coating breaks down over time. Maybe it's a timing thing. It breaks down over time so that by the spring that's all broken down, and now we've got a nice bare seed in the soil. Some leaves may have blown over it in nature, and then that's ready to sprout next spring. So I want to try and be as close to nature as I can, so that's why I want to leave my produce to get as ripe as possible, but I don't want it to get so ripe that it drops on my soil, because I want those seeds so that I can decide next year where I want to plant them, especially on an allotment. If you're practicing a rotation, I don't necessarily want to grow my cucumbers in the same spot, so I want the seeds, not nature, so I can carry the seeds and put them in a different bed next year. All we're going to do is, so yeah, ideally this might not be quite ripe, but like I said, I've got that one outside that's really, really ripe. Oh, it's getting there. So, oh, that smell, it's so lovely even when it's getting ripe. So there's all our lovely seeds. Quite simply, what we're going to do, I'm wrong-handed. I've got a spoon and I'm just going to scrape the seeds out from the cucumber and into the jar. And this is why I've got the jam funnel for this one, because it's a bit messy, they go flying, but at least with the jam funnel it's directing them all down into the jar. Now there's plenty of juice with it too. We want that moisture. So you can see there's enough for them to slosh around in. If it was quite dry, you could add a little bit of water if needs be, because essentially now what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave them alone. I'm going to let them ferment. So I'm using the fermentation method. So over the next days, actually the smell is interesting, because when I first cut it, I thought, oh, that smell of cucumber. But it's got a slight, it's not acrid, it's like sour tinge to it. I can tell that this is on its, you wouldn't eat this. It's gone over. I mean, it's not hideously unpleasant, but it's quite, just that smell alone is saying to me, don't eat it, it's over. So, fermenting. So they're going to stay in the jar, they'll just sit on the kitchen windowsill, and they're going to ferment in their own juices, and there's natural bacteria in the air and what have you. And eventually a scum of mould and horribleness will form on the top. It's not nice, hence put the lid on. So in about a week or so's time, that should, I think I might have filmed the scummy bit. If I can remember, I'll see if I can find the card with the getting off. But basically in a week's time I will use a spoon to get the worst of that scummy stuff off, then tip the contents into a sieve and rinse them under the tap, and that should, all of that gelatinous stuff should have gone. So I'm left with clean seeds which I can then lay out to dry and then store for next year. So the tomatoes, it's exactly the same principle. We want, this is one of the problems I'm having with so much rain. I don't know if you can see, yeah, that's split. The ones that I'd earmarked for seed saving, they're split. The rain has just done for us, they've split. They're full of fruit flies now, don't want them. But yeah, same principle. I'll just cut it in half across its middle. Let's do it. Let's just get on and do. And then the great thing about tomatoes, of course, is there are so many seeds in just one tomato. And then I'm just going to squeeze out the pulp that's got the tomato seeds in, and with this one I probably will add a little bit of water. The reason for adding the water is because you don't want it to dry out. So yeah, you can see there's not a lot of liquid within that, so just give it a bit of water and they'll slosh around. Right, so that's pretty much it with tomatoes and cukes. I will finish this off camera. I'll do the other half of the cuke and the rest of the tomatoes. I am saving some of these tomato seeds for Paul, because next year we're going to have a little, not a competition, we're not competing with each other, but we're going to have a little compare and see, because we think, Paul and I between us, we think that he might have had some hinky compost at some point. Because my tomatoes just reach for the skies, and like I was just saying, oh, that's my cue to start wrapping up. There's one last thing I want to share with the beans. Yeah, like I was saying in the garden, like mine were at 8 feet and I've cut them down and they're still trying to grow. They've put out so much side stuff since I cut their tops off. So I think they would carry on. I think they'd get to 10 feet if I left them. More, who knows? So I grow these absolute whopping tomato plants, and Paul's rarely seem to get to more than 3 or 4 feet high. And that's why we think there might be something that's gone on with that. He had some stable manure years and years when he was setting up those raised beds or the edged beds, because, you know, he's a good gardener, he's a hard-working gardener, he tends his garden, he nurtures his plants. Why are they so diddy and mine are so massive? So we're both going to use my seed. I mean, he's going to grow other tomatoes, of course, but we're both going to use my saved seed from this year, and we're going to do our sowings. I think we're planning to do it at the same time, because weather-wise we should be a bit similar. But if we start at the same time, plant out at roughly the same time, hopefully we might get an idea that actually, yeah, it is his soil rather than his lack of care, because he is a caring gardener. Right, that's that. So one quick last thing on beans. They're on the table waiting for us. We're at a jaunty angle. I feel like I'm squatting to see you. That's because I just want to show you bits and bobs with my beans. So I've got in here some cocoa de pampol. This was from the first lot I picked. Gosh, it was towards the end of July. They were coming already or drying. And then this is some more recent ones. Literally just the other day when I was taking the plants out and just finding the last few dried ones that I'd missed. So these, because there's quite a few of them, they were spread out on a flat plate to dry. These have only just come in. And the reason I've got them side by side, I wanted to give you the sound demonstration. Can you see them if I move them all the way up here? So these ones that I picked probably 4 or 5 weeks ago now have had time to dry, and you can hear it. If the seagulls, shh, thank you, I've got them trained now. Can you hear how it's quite a high tinny sound? Whereas these which were picked that haven't finished drying, can you hear how it's a duller sound? It's like, you know, it's like when you ping a piece of bone china, it's dull if there's a hairline crack. So dull versus that higher pitched tinny. Hang on, this angle is too weird, I can't do it. I'm going to drop you all down. Whee! Okay, for a little ride. So they need longer to dry. You want to get, which ones are these? I've forgotten which. That's my dry ones. So I can just tell straight away by the sound. So spread them out on a plate to dry, and when they are that bone dry, that kind of ting ting ting, properly dry, they can go into a little jar. Yes, it's a glass jar, any food grade glass jar, jam jar for example. This is a little mini jam jar. Then this is going to go into the freezer for 3 days. This is the Kawanga Institute method, the Kawanga Institute of New Zealand, and they know what they're doing. They have created a huge heritage seed library of their native New Zealand plants, but also a library of those plants that were brought over by white settlers. So it's a really look up Kawanga, Koanga, Kawanga Institute. So they'll go into the freezer for 3 days, and all of that will do, and I do this with beans I save for eating as well. If I'm saving dried beans for eating, they all get the same treatment. 3 days in the freezer, and it will kill off any little, if a bug has managed to get into that bean and lay its egg, it will kill it off so it won't hatch. Because I'm sure some of you have experienced it. You get to about February or March and you've got all your beautiful jars and jars of dried beans, and then you look one day and it's like there's little black things hopping around in there. They've hatched. So I give them the 3-day freeze for seed saving and for eating. Now you might think, but isn't that going to kill the seed? No, because the seed is bone dry. That's why we want to be really careful about drying them. If there was dampness in them still, that moisture, when it freezes, will expand and it ruptures the cell membrane, so that then when it defrosts, the cell membrane collapses and you've got a non-viable seed. When you think about watery things that you take out of the freezer, like a cucumber, think of the mush of a cucumber if you were to freeze it. That's all those cells have ruptured, and then on defrosting, the cell structure collapses and you're left with mush. But not if they're bone dry. So that's what I do with all my beans. They get their 3-day freeze to make sure there's no bugs are going to hatch in the spring, especially important for that, the beans I'm saving to eat. So there we go. I will finish off in getting my tomato seeds and cucumber seeds into those kilner jars. Like I say, I'll give it a week. I'll be watching them, watching that fermentation process, and you know, it might take a couple of weeks. This kitchen is much cooler than my London kitchen, so it might be that it takes a couple of weeks for that to happen. Once I can see a really nice bit of scuzzy scum on the top, I'll think, yeah, we're there. Scrape it off, get those seeds really thoroughly rinsed, spread them out on a tea towel, a serviette, a napkin, whatever it is, on a piece of cloth. Let them get dry, and then they can eventually go into little packets with a label on saying, my harvest from this year, and I will send a little packet to Paul that says, Vivi's seeds to try in Paul's garden. Brilliant. All right, lovelies, I hope that's useful. I will see you all again really soon. I'm not sure for what, but I'll see you soon. Until then, please take care of yourselves. Cheerio.